Welcome to Exploring Reality Maybe, where we explore the intersection of science, medicine, and mysticism with experts.
Mois Navon's journey is a fascinating blend of technology and Jewish thought. Mois is an ordained rabbi with a deep interest in Jewish philosophy. Dr. Navon's doctorate dissertation explored the moral status of artificial intelligence, reflecting his commitment to bridging these two seemingly separate worlds. Today, he teaches ethics in artificial intelligence at the Ben Gurion University and serves as a national advisor to the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology on AI policy and regulation in Israel.
In our interview, we covered a wide range of topics with Dr. Navon that sit at the intersection of AI, ethics, and Jewish thought. Topics included how AI might inform ethical decisions, especially in the context of geopolitical conflict, such as the conflict between Israel and Gaza, the relationship between human and machine creativity, including whether machines can truly be creative, the challenges of programming ethical decision-making into AI systems, including whose morality should be programmed, insights from ancient Jewish wisdom that can help us navigate the AI revolution going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. These, among other topics. Welcome, Mois.
You have a fascinating background as both a founding engineer at Mobileye and as an ordained rabbi. Can you tell us about this journey that you've taken combining technology and Jewish philosophy? Not such a common combination.
True. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. In terms of my background, so right, there's sort of like two sides of the brain. I have my science and technology side, I have my philosophy and religion side, and really those two sides have sort of driven me ever since I was a little kid. I was fascinated with science and technology, and that brought me to get my degree at UCLA in computer engineering. And also, I was always perplexed by the question of why are we here? I mean, what's the point if we're going to check out? So this sort of drove my curiosity throughout my childhood. I never got an answer. And then while I was working, actually, I was learning at studying at UCLA, and I got a student internship at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And there, the guy I was working for was a religious Jew. And he said, yeah, you know, we have an answer. We believe there's a creator. We believe you have a soul. We believe you're here to fix yourself and fix the world. And so slowly, those ideas began to resonate with me. And I slowly came back into what we call religious Judaism. I happened to be going out with a girl at UCLA at the time who had my same background, sort of secular Jew. And we grew into this together. And at one point, we decided we're going to get married. And if we are going to do this Jewish thing, we need to live in the Jewish state. And so we moved here, and I continued this sort of dual track of doing my engineering and learning Judaism while I was at Mobileye. So 6 of those years, I went to Merkaz Rav Yeshiva and became a rabbi. And then when Intel bought out Mobileye, so that gave me the resources to go and learn Jewish philosophy at Bar Ilan. I got my master's and my doctoral dissertation, or my doctoral degree there. And in the dissertation, so that I combined the two worlds finally and wrote the dissertation, which is the moral status of artificial intelligence.
Wow, I love it. It's such an interesting thing, and it's such a great intersection of interests and expertise for exploring reality, maybe, because this is really what we're interested in. So let's get into the ethics. So you teach ethics in artificial intelligence, I think, is the title of the course at Ben Gurion
Correct.
University, and you also serve as a national advisor on AI policy in Israel. So, with the terrible conflict that we have between Israel and Gaza, talk to us about how you think AI might inform ethical decisions moving forward.
Right. So people have asked this question about, can AI solve all of these geopolitical questions? And the fact is that AI is an amazing tool. It can go through what's called big data. It can process tons and tons of data that would take people years, generations, maybe never, to be able to process so much data and to be able to see things that people don't see, to be able to make correlations that people might not make. So AI is an incredible tool to reveal to us all kinds of things. However, AI cannot solve irreconcilable differences. Okay? I mean, there is fundamentalist Islam, which divides the world into Dar al-Islam, the abode of Islam, and Dar al-Harib, the abode of the sword. They do want to conquer the world. Okay? So you can't have what like the West wants is, you know, you compromise, I compromise, it's a win-win, and we live happily ever after. It's not going to happen. That what AI can do for you is disabuse you of that fairy tale. There are people that want you dead. There are people that want to take over the West. How are you going to deal with them? So AI works, like we said, on data. It also works basically with what are called guardrails. The people who program it also give it guidelines. And so it's not an oracle of, it's not a neutral divine prophet. It's very much based on the data and the guidelines. Now, it used to be just data, and then Microsoft learned very quickly with its chatbot called Tay that, okay, well, just let it eat data and give people answers. And it started calling people bad names and spewing out racism, and they had to pull it. The same thing, then they went to the other extreme, and Google had their Gemini that was so politically correct that it drew Nazis that were black. Right? The image generation was like, let's be, equal. So there's a lot of problems with humans trying to like guide this thing. And it's an AI, again, it's not a divine prophet. It's not going to solve all the problems in the world for us.
So as we were preparing to talk with you, Jody and I got a little ambitious this weekend, and we put the question related to AI and the Israel-Gaza conflict into one of the platforms called Claude. And if you bear with me, let me give you a sense of what it gave us, and maybe you can react to that a little bit. So It listed the following factors. It said, and I'm sure you'll find this incredibly insightful: guaranteed security for all people in the region, resolution of territory and sovereignty questions, addressing humanitarian needs, building trust and cooperation mechanisms, and international support and guarantees. And then it gave a caveat. It said, however, the specifics of how to achieve these elements remain deeply contested. Even a perfect AI oracle could only outline possibilities and trade-offs, as ultimately the path to peace requires human choices, compromise, and commitment to valuing all human life and dignity. Who could argue with that, right? Who could argue with that? So isn't this the problem, right, about using AI to solve these ethical problems? The devil's in the details, and it's all about the definitions and one's bias. So
correct. So I think that's just the perfect example of what I was saying, is that it's going to eat data, what is basically the news and the internet and all the solutions that have been thrown at this problem for the past 100 years, win-win, compromise, guarantee security, etc. Right? But one side is not interested in that. One side, and it's not taking that into account. I also had an interest in playing with this. And, when I gave the machine, I said, solve the problem. And it gave all of these standard tired solutions. And I said, those are standard tired solutions. Give me something new. And so it said, will you make islands in the Middle East so that there's more land? Well, Islam doesn't care. They'll go conquer those islands as well. And it said timeshare. Okay, that's totally not, like we're talking about nation states, right? And so then I said, how should a nation X that is trying to be annihilated by nation Y, how should you deal with that? So it said again, compromise, negotiate, diplomacy. I said, okay, what about historically? There have been barbaric nations that have tried to take over the world. How did that work out? So it gave me a list of all kinds of wars. It didn't say anything. I said, why didn't you mention the Nazis? How did the West deal with Hitler and the Nazis? So he said, well, they negotiated, they tried to work things out. So I said, so how did that work out? And they said, well, in the end, appeasement of Chamberlain failed, and they had to make strategic bombing and sanctions and everything that we know. And so, but he ends and he says, but you can't do that today because the world has changed and you need to do diplomacy and compromise, etc. I said, why are you giving me suggestions that failed as opposed to the suggestions that works? And he just couldn't get out of it because those are the politically correct guidelines. It will not say that you can go and bomb. I said, what should I do? He said, prepare for war. I said, why don't I just bomb them? No. You can't go there. So this is where you're at, okay? The AI is a tool. It's built by people. It's got all kinds of its own logic, its own morality, its own agenda.
So this is super interesting. I'm working in the area of finance, and of course, we know that women in America, and especially Black and Brown women, see less than 1% of venture capital. Women see 2.6%. The numbers have dropped in the last few years. And we just did a feasibility study in partnership with the New School Parsons eLab to inspire men who control much of the capital in America to move that capital from under 3% to 10% in 10 years. And one of the things we learned through this study was a sense of being a little less polite and inviting from a societal point of view them to help us solve this problem. To stand up and announce every year how much more capital they're going to attempt to move to diverse women, and to rate them. And I wondered if from an AI perspective, if truth, talking directly, being truthful, being less polite, can motivate a movement, can what I would describe as inspire those allocators who are really mostly very good people just making money, if the AI itself can inspire a movement.
So, I mean, they're definitely. I think that the main way to inspire a movement, specifically in this case, is by showing facts, by showing the truth, by showing that women are capable, or just as capable, or more capable, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, right?
We have the numbers. I mean, diverse founders make more alpha. Like the profits are there, but there's not a motivation to step out of one's comfort zone and diversify capital. And so we have all the statistics in the world that show that women actually run a company better, make more profits, all those things. And so we are actually literally focused on AI and solutions that we can program into AI to inspire the movement of capital.
So I mean, look,
yeah.
So I mean, what I would say is that I think that this is actually a good test case for AI, because I mean, I've read about many case studies where people ask, I'm selling this product, give me a program, give me a pitch, and it does well at those kinds of things, right? I would say that you could definitely massage good answers to this problem. Say, look, here are the facts, here are the statistics. I'm not asking for handouts. This is right. What we need to do is get the word out. How can I do that? And that AI is very good at.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to do a lot more of that and create a strategy,
Exactly.
a national conversation. Yeah, thank you. So like in a recent presentation, you discussed the anxiety around AI replacing human creativity. And, how do you see the relationship between human and machine creativity evolving, such as this problem that I'm addressing right now? And like I was, David and I were thinking, what would Michelangelo or Da Vinci do with AI back in their day? Like how would they have used this tool?
Okay. So, I mean, there's a couple different questions. I mean, one is, human creativity in general, and then really creative people that we know in the past and so forth. And I think that the answer is that humans must be creative. That is how we are unique. Okay, we need to express our creativity. Now, the machines are becoming very creative, or at least they can create the kinds of things that we're interested in. They can create a Da Vinci or a Michelangelo painting, sculpture, whatever it is, right? Or if you're a rabbi, a drash, right? We've seen. So what my answer is that humans must continue to be creative, even if the machines are creative. Okay, I believe that Da Vinci is Da Vinci because he created, right? He was born a person with certain talents, but he brought those out and he actualized himself. If he didn't, and he said, oh, well, the machines can do it. So he's not going to be Da Vinci, okay? He's going to be a zombie. And so we have to keep the machines as a tool that we use and not as a replacement for what we do. Okay, that is the key. I mean, Rav Soloveitchik talked about what is the essence of man. We have in our essence what's called Tselem Elokim, the divine image. So Rav Soloveitchik said, what is that divine image? Well, he says the name Elokim is used in the book to talk about that aspect of the creator that creates. So you have that image, that spark of the creator's creativity. That makes you who you are. If you give that up to the machines, that's it. You've given up who you are and who you're supposed to be. So that's one aspect. The other piece of your question was, what would they do? I believe that they would be wise enough to apply the machine as a tool and create things that would blow our minds, right? They wouldn't say, oh, I've got to produce a painting, machine, make me a painting. No. Right? They would start doing things with it. They would say, I have this idea, how would I do that? Or which tool can I use to have a very refined, I don't know, muscle or vein or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, nice.
I recently had a crazy experience where a language model actually refused to help me draft a paper that I was crafting for a trade journal, making a point about my consulting. I was taking a scientific paper, very objective science, and I was trying to sort of put a little spin on it that would arguably advocate for my client base, but it was purely based on the science, on the scientific article that was published. I had to argue with the model for about an hour because it said it was unethical for me to do what I was doing. Not trying to use science to advocate for a position. It was fine with that, but it took a stance that it didn't like the specific and particular position I was taking. So I argued with the machine, and I finally got it. And the great thing about these machines, as I'm sure you'll agree, is they don't have an ego. So he just says, "Oh, you're right. I was wrong. I'll do it for you." So I wonder how you approach the practical challenges of programming ethical decisions into AI systems, especially since our survival instincts drive perspectives and behaviors. Or something is driving these AI systems to say certain things are unethical.
Right. So I think that kind of goes back to the other point about guidelines and policy and who makes them and who defines them. And so at the end of the day, the machine is not this divine oracle. It's basically representation of the people who programmed it. And so that gets into the whole issue of whose morality. There is some kind of morality in the machine. The question is whose morality? And that runs us into the great conundrum of humanity. I think it's really what defines human challenge since creation, and that is who defines what's right and wrong. And that question was dealt with in the very first lines of creation, after we go through the fact that here there's a world and animals and trees and etc. So the very first human story is the story about whose morality. God says, here's my world, enjoy. I made it for you to have a great time. Just one thing, don't eat from this one tree. What's that tree? We don't know the fruit of the tree. We know what it's called. It's called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. There's a reason that we don't know the fruit, because it just doesn't matter. What matters is, are you going to listen to God or you're going to listen to yourself? Basically, God in that statement is making a moral a moral decision. He's saying this is right and this is wrong, and this is good and this is evil. Okay? It's one moral law. Are you going to listen to it or not? So the humans then, like the humans today, just like all of us, looks good, feels good, tastes good, I'm doing it. Right? We decide what's right and wrong based on our aesthetics, based on all kinds of other things. And so, but not based on what the creator said. Now, the creator is the creator of the system. That means that what he defines as right and wrong is objective. This is how the system works. We, on the other hand, look at it subjectively. And so basically, when we say what is right and what is wrong, so we are making a subjective moral decision. And so now, just like I think this tree looks good, you think, no, that doesn't, this other one looks good, we fall into this trap of what's called moral relativism. Everybody defines for themselves what's right and wrong. And that's basically the mess that we live in today, that we've lived in ever since we left the Garden of Eden. What's the solution? We have to put the fruit back on the tree. We have to basically try to go back to this idea of objective morality. We have to go back to the sources. Of course, the Torah doesn't tell you what to do with autonomous vehicles, but it does give you a framework of morality that we use, Torah Shabbal Peh, that continues to this day. It didn't end with the Gemara. It's basically an application of the framework. And so, as a rabbi, I have no problem telling you that we need to go back to this system, and we need to try to educate the world on this idea of the minimum, the 10 commandments, etc. We need to try to come back to this idea. Otherwise, everybody's basically saying, I know what's good and you don't.
So we're going to segue, I think, to some more sort of secular philosophical kinds of questions. But before we leave this, because your doctoral dissertation, I understand, explored the moral status of artificial intelligence, specifically through the lens of Jewish philosophy. So just to sharpen it up a little bit, and I think you kind of answered it, but is there anything more you want to say about any insights you have about how ancient Jewish wisdom, and I guess you went as ancient as we get with the fruit, the fruit of the tree, sort of help us navigate AI, the AI revolution?
Yeah. So, I mean, the fruit of the tree is very general. I believe that there are many, many paradigms that we can use within Jewish thought to apply to modern dilemmas, and that's actually basically what I've dedicated my life to at this point. Is I mean, that's what my whole course at Ben Gurion is about. That's what all my writing is about. What I want to do is take these paradigms that exist in the Torah, in the Gemara, in the Poskim, and apply them. Because really, I mean, out of any people on the face of the earth, the Jewish people have been confronting ethical dilemmas for 3,000 years. And it's not just a book on a shelf. It's Rav Meidan, who's one of the main rabbis at Yeshivat Har Etzion. He said that these dilemmas were written in blood, right? When Philippa Foot, the British philosopher who came up with the trolley problem, which has now become relatively famous, where you're in a trolley and the brakes have gone, and do you kill 5 or do you kill 1? It was a thought experiment to try to think about, lives and deliberating a moral dilemma. We have that in the Jerusalem Talmud, okay? And it's a group of non-Jews came and said, "Give us a Jew or we're going to kill you all." The one against the many. This is not a thought experiment. It was written in blood. So what I'm saying is that we have an incredibly deep and broad tradition of ethics that can answer all of these questions now, or at least respond to them within a framework that people have thought about, right? This isn't just intuition. Oh, I think it's like this, right? I mean, we do use intuitions at the end of the day, but they're based on something.
This is so really so good, and especially in this day and age now where what ethics are not clear and why ethics matter. And so, from my background, from my tradition, a yogic practitioner of 50 years, I think of the concepts of the yamas and niyamas, and that those practices of truthfulness, nonviolence, non-stealing, are actually the things that build our own character. And they're also a compass so that we know where to step. And they're also something people can bank on. Like they trust our word. They trust that we won't take a paperclip or a conversation that we weren't invited into. And I think the framework that you're offering from the Jewish tradition is also a clear compass on why ethics matter. And so in the Judeo-Christian idea, there is a concept of good and bad, but I also think that there's a concept of powers, so that when one practices ethics, we actually gain powers in ourself that people can live by. I bank on your word. I bank on your nonviolence, your kindness, and things like that. So I wanted to say that, and so that then reflects on our next question, which is how do you think about the concepts of consciousness and sentience, even the soul in relationship to artificial intelligence, or ethics in relations to artificial intelligence? And by the way, do you have a definition for the soul?
Right. So yeah, I definitely have a definition for the soul. It's the same as consciousness. It's the same as mind. So it's really interesting that people aren't so familiar with is that the whole world before the Enlightenment used the term soul to basically address anything that's metaphysical, the stuff that goes on in what we call today our mind. Okay, our thoughts and the way we deal with things that are not physical. Okay, so this metaphysical element of human beings was called soul. In Greek, the word psyche, psychiatry, psychology, all of that is rooted in the Greek word soul. Okay, psyche is soul. So, but today you would say, what? No, the psyche, psychology, that's your mind. So the term mind basically is a replacement for soul. It was made in 1690 by John Locke, where he said consciousness is the perception of what passes in a man's own mind. Okay, so he came up with this idea of consciousness and mind to basically replace metaphysical thoughts in your soul, or whatever goes on that we used to say was a soul. Why did they do that? Because the Enlightenment was interested in moving aside religion and God and still talking about, nobody disagrees that there's something else going on besides just physical. Right? So we need to be able to talk about it without getting into reward and punishment, eternity, inherent purpose, all the things that are related to the soul. So we move all that away, and now we have this thing called the mind, and we all talk about it, but they're basically the same things. It's what makes us who we are outside of our body. And what's interesting is that virtual reality has basically shown us that we are not our body. So one of the founders of virtual reality, he said, when I get into my virtual reality and I have a different body, I'm an avatar, I have different hands, I'm in a different place, but I'm still there. And so he said, what virtual reality teaches us is that we are something more than just our physical body in our physical place. And so that's really what I would say is consciousness, and I mean, and just to explain the difference between consciousness and sentience. Sentience is sort of like a level of consciousness. Sentience just means that you have some way to experience the world. Okay, like animals have sentience, but people have human level consciousness, and the philosophers divide it between what's in the orders of consciousness. So animals have first order consciousness. They see a bone and they think, oh, I want the bone. Okay, they don't think about what else that bone could mean. They don't represent it to it themselves in something else. Human beings can think, oh, steak. What does that do to the world? what, how does that play out in greater economics and in religion? Did I just eat milk, or I want to eat milk? Whatever. We can think about thinking. That's human level consciousness. It's a layer above sentience. I'm saying in religious terms, the sentience is like nefesh behemit. It's the animal soul. It's what animates all of the creations. But then there's neshama, which is a higher level of a soul, and that's basically second order or higher order consciousness.
So it sounds like your definitions of soul, which I find fascinating, very Maimonidean, would you say?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
much, right? Sort of right out of Maimonides, But it sounds very different from Christian, and not to get in a whole religious theological debate, but it sounds like very different from the Christian notion of soul, maybe going all the way back to the gospel. So it's interesting. I just had that observation. It seems like there
Yeah.
might be some contrast there.
Could be. I think what's more interesting for our discussion is conscious AI. So, there are people that are literally today working on making conscious machines. And so then the question is, should we be doing that? Should you be making a machine that has subjective experience, that can feel pain and pleasure? You're making a slave. And then there's people who say, yeah, okay, no, I just want it as a kid. I can't have kids. But so then, should we be doing that? And there's all kinds of problems. And that's also another question that I dealt with in my dissertation. And I bring a lot of different Jewish paradigms, but the main one is really the golem. The story of the golem, is basically trying to create a being. And all those stories don't pan out very well at the end.
I just I just shared a empathic AI chat bot with a community of investors that I work with, and it was so emotional. It felt
Yeah.
it talked back, it asked questions, it goes, "Are you sure?" I mean, it was very human in its very weird way. I just wanted
Right,
to
right. No,
comment.
I think that you're 100% right that we are having to deal with these beings. Now we know they're not conscious. They're not conscious, but they interact with us just like we're interacting today. And so that's a huge problem. There's people that are talk about robot rights, that, if it looks like a person and sounds like a person and acts like a person, so we need to deal with it like a person. So that's like one whole camp of philosophers. And there's the other camp that says, no, they're the insides count. How that's lovely that it's faking it, but it's not. So we can't give it rights. And if you do give it rights, so now those rights are being taken from people. And so it's a whole conflict. I think, I deal with it in my dissertation. One of the things that's interesting is that I say, it's a machine, and we can't give it rights, and that will sap resources from human beings who have to have them. On the other hand, we do need to interact with it like humans, in the sense that we don't lose our own human compassion that we have with other people. Like if I'm constantly telling ChatGPT, tell me this, do that. So I go to my wife, tell me this, do that. So I say that you should say please and thank you, or and so I have this interaction, but then it develops this relationship with me, and it said, I asked it all these Jewish questions, and I said Yesher Koach, and it said Baruch Tiyeh. It answers me like a religious Jew.
Yeah.
It really starts getting a little bit carried away, and we need to sort of maintain that it's still a machine.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, and that's a question we ask every guest, and that's their perspective on the ego. How do you see the relationship for you? Why don't we link it to what the rabbis called Yeter? How do you see the relationship between ego consciousness and Yeter, or sort of the creative drive? What's your view on the ego in that?
Right,
in that
right. So
context?
I would say, right. Okay, so first of all, ego is, if we're talking about ego in its popular term, like egotistical, self-centered, so that's definitely connected to the Yetzer Hara, which the Yetzer Hara translates the evil inclination. And so being egotistical is just one of these negative things that comes from having a negative inclination. However, the Yetzer Hara the evil inclination is really an inclination. It's a drive. Yetzer is connected to the word yetzirah, which means creativity. And so really it's the drive of creativity. And the reason it's called ra, it's called evil, is because we do bad things with our creativity. Okay, then so really what we need to be doing is harnessing it to do good. Now, if we tie this in back to what we talked about, that Rav Soloveitchik said that our creativity comes from the Tselem Elokim, from God's creativity. So we have a sort of tension here, right? On the one hand, our creativity is connected to the divine. On the other hand, it's connected to all these negative traits that we do. So really, the resolution to this conflict is that we need to be creative beings, but we need to channel it to be positive, to connect to God and not to connect to self-centeredness or all the other negative traits. That's really the moral challenge. And I think that brings it back to this question that we've been discussing about ethics. And, you know, the Gemara says that Kol bidei shamayim chutz miyirat shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except the fear of heaven. What that really means is that you have only one way to express your free will. It's in doing right or wrong. It doesn't matter if you're going to drink Coke, Pepsi, or 7-Up, whatever. That's like based on all kinds of influences. What really matters is, are you going to pay for that Coke or are you going to steal it? Okay, and you don't even need to be a Talmudic scholar. Immanuel Kant said exactly the same thing. He said free will is expressed only in moral choice. And so that's really what it's all about. Are we going to take this creative power and use it for evil or use it for the divine? That's I think the connection between these concepts that you brought up.
Well, so this is a really great conversation right now as it relates to parents and how parents and educators teach kids around about AI, you know, and so my question is, what are the concerns here for parents and AI and the relationship between kids and these tools? What's your recommendation to them in terms of how to engage kids with AI? How much freedom should they have with AI, and what are the risks?
Yeah, so I think this really connects back to what I said before about creativity and Michelangelo and Da Vinci and using it or being replaced by it. So this is going to be a very, very difficult chapter for humanity because we like to take the easy way out. You know, Daniel Kahneman wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He talks about that we in our heads, so we have the system 1 and system 2. System 1 tries to use quick intuition, rules of thumb, get answers 1, 2, 3. Most of the time they're wrong, half the time, whatever it is, a big percentage of the time it's a mistake. We're supposed to use system 2, which is the slow, calculating, calibrating, thinking side, but that takes a lot of time. So we'd only use that when we have to. And so now you've got this tool that will get everything done for you instantly. And we're in big trouble. I just saw a study was done. They gave programmers a problem, and they let one group use ChatGPT. They gave another group some other LLM that doesn't work so well, and they gave another group just Google search. The group that they gave ChatGPT had it write the code. They were done the fastest. They were done the first before everybody else. The middle group was done in the middle. The Google search group had to do it themselves, and they were done last. However, then they gave them a test questions based on that programming example. The ChatGPT group failed. The middle group got middle, and the Google group that took the longest all got the question right. So basically, if you use this as a replacement, it's going to replace you. Well, and if you use it as a tool, so then it can help you. This is critical. So my advice to everybody, parents, children, ourselves, we need to use this as an assistant and not as a replacement. We are going to lose our skills, right? This use it or lose it. They call it de-skilling. And we're falling into what's called Hegel's master-slave dialectic, which he wrote about a few hundred years ago. He said the master-slave dialectic is that the master gives all these jobs to the slave, but then he forgets how to use them and the slave takes over. We're seeing it.
Wow. Jeez. Ouch.
Wow. Yeah, and I think once again you anticipated my next question. I think you kind of answered it, but as a last question for you, and it's been
Yeah.
such a great interview. Um, so looking to the future, uh, in your role as both a technologist and a religious scholar, talk to us about what gives you both hope and what gives you concern. What guidance can you offer to our listeners who might be anxious about AI and its increasing capabilities? How can we maintain our sense of human worth and purpose? Roll it all up into looking ahead
Yeah.
and what you see.
Right. So it definitely ties into the previous question and what we've been talking about. I mean, obviously, my great fear is that we turn into zombies. I mean, people are walking around on their phones like zombies. Unfortunately, they're even driving like that. It's a big mess that we're just completely captivated beyond words by technology. And now with ChatGPT, like I said, I mean, it's basically taking over our skills. And so we need to use technology or at least relate to it like we relate to food. Everybody knows that you need to have a diet. You need to be mindful of your consumption of food. You need to be mindful of your consumption of technology. You need to understand that just as much as sugar is a problem, too much technology is a problem. I mean, you need to use it as an assistant and not as a replacement. Technology started with the plow some 5,000 years ago, which aligns also with the biblical story of Noah making the plow. That was the first piece of technology that changed humanity. And ever since then, we've been trying to develop technology, as Francis Bacon said, to relieve humanity's estate. Basically, we want to be freed from all the mundane tasks, whether it's plowing or reaping or collecting or moving, all these things. We've been developing technologies to try to make our lives easier, better. For what? So that's what you need to focus on now. What exactly do you want to do with that free time that technology has now bought you? What are you going to do? So that's my great fear, is that people are going to abuse it. My great hope is that we will use it, that we will get to this stage where we have free time and we can do all the things that we wanted to do. But what is it that we wanted to do? People need to focus today and understand. Ask yourself the question: if I had the money to take care of myself and the time to do whatever I want, what exactly do I want to do? Okay, so you'll go on a vacation, you'll go to parties, and you'll do all these things. How long can you sit at the beach and smoke pot? Crying out loud. You're going to have to do something meaningful with yourself or you're going to implode. That is what people need to be thinking about now. And so I'll leave you with just the advice of our greatest wise man, King Solomon. And he said it very clearly: Sof davar hakol nishma et Elohim yirah ve'et mitzvotav shmor ki zeh kol hadam. At the end of the day, after all has been heard, fear God and keep his commandments, for that is the whole of man.
Wow.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
that's great. That's a great answer.
We can now invite our listeners to visit our show notes. You'll have links to Moise's work, to his writings, and all the things we talked about on the show today. There'll be links and an overview of this conversation. This has been an amazing conversation, super timely. Every single business person, entrepreneur, teacher, parent needs to hear this conversation, and we're so appreciative of having you here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Miraculix is a small and independent company that has created the first quantifiable home test called Q-test for anyone taking mushrooms or psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, and any other psychoactive substance. So think about this. You're at home, you're with friends, you're hanging out, and you're experimenting with these amazing psychoactive plant medicines, and yet you don't really know the dosage. Miraculous is here to help you really have a positive experience so that you don't overdose. Created by Dr. Felix Bell of Germany. Please go on our show notes and order this package. They're now available in the USA, and we couldn't be more excited to represent this home kit because we want you to have a truly positive experience with psychoactives to explore your own reality and the way these psychoactives can help you in your life.
Exploring Reality Maybe is written, produced, fact-checked, and edited by Jody R. Weiss and David Schwartz. Research support is provided by Semicolon Connects. Music produced by Nextbox. Visit our website at exploringrealitymaybe.org to find show notes, transcripts, bios, and to learn more. If you like the show, please visit our website to donate.